I've always been uncomfortable with this kind of thing. But I'm sure I'll get used to it.
I'm comfortable with it.
I'm getting used to it already.
With these chords myself.
Will you be able to hear your phone if it rings during the session, so you can answer all your important calls?
Well, no, we don't have any. We don't have to worry about it. Hey, here's my question. When did you first hear Derek Bailey? I remember your notes to Volume 1. You talked about how you first heard Derek Bailey and it was like home or something?
Well, I used to get these mail order catalogs.
What's her name?
Mary Lou Webb.
Yeah, I remember. I got those too.
I got the Mary Lou Webb mail order catalog. And I noticed there was some labels I'd never heard of. Incus was one, I remember. Then there was also the, whatever the name of the label was from Holland. Willem Breuker.
ICP.
ICP. I was curious about those, and the names I recognized on them were Han Bennick and Misha Mengelberg.
Because they were on the Dolphy record?
Yeah, because they were on these Dolphy records. That's right. Han Bennick,
Yeah, there's that phone.
I recognized that name, and they had a record with a guitar player. I was very interested because there was so little free jazz guitar playing.
What did you just know? Sonny Chirac?
There was just Sonny Chirac.
Yeah, I knew that first from the Pharoah Sanders record.
But he was also on Herbie Mann records and stuff.
That's true, they were great, weren't they? Remember the live one with that incredible solo?
I just remember they used to say, when Herbie Mann played live in New York, you could tell when Sonny Chirac was soloing because the whole audience was out on the sidewalk. So I sent for one of these records. It was, I sent for two at once. I got Topography of the Lungs, and I got the solo one, the one that you have the photo of.
Incus 2. You got Incus 1 and Incus 2.
Well, they took me by surprise. I never heard anyone play like that before.
Well, what did you hear? What was special about it?
It just didn't sound like jazz at all. I mean, there wasn't even the free jazz stuff. There was some reference point. Even if it didn't sound like a jazz record, it sounded like something you heard on a jazz record. But this was completely different.
What year?
You know the Gavin Bryars composition he plays.
The Squirrel and the Rickety Rackety Bridge.
That's not a typical kind of thing he did.
Let's do that. It's hammering.
In fact, that's the only composition I think he's recorded on a record.
Well, there's three compositions on Incus 2.
That's the only one I remember.
There's the Michel Mengelberg one. There's the
I don't remember that.
Wait a minute. You know that one? That one's on there. And there's a Willem Breuker composition called Christianity Edited. Where is the Police?
But so those were a little bit more like things I might have heard, but the improvised pieces were really, they just have a different kind of use of energy. Now the Topography of the Lungs was more like energy jazz kind of,
like free jazz.
Except it didn't have the kind of lyrical side of free jazz that you hear with Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders, where there's some kind of a theme that usually sounds very majestic or pretty, and then they freak out. This was just freaking out right from the get-go. But he didn't really play like that, really.
The Derek was more...
I mean, when you play like that, you're trying to impress people.
Can you imitate what you thought Incus 2 sounded like?
Well... No, that's my own lick, sorry. I keep throwing in my own licks.
So you got
the incredible thing though was that you could just write Derek Bailey a letter, right? Type him a little letter, and then he would write you back. That was the most incredible
I
thing.
had the same experience.
He wrote back a really nice letter,
And you'd order the records and you'd get a little note.
and the first time I came to England, he helped organize some gigs, and he had me over for lunch and drove me around London, and really gave me the deluxe treatment for a little jerk.
Every once in a while I realize how much energy Derek does put into doing stuff for other improvisers. I mean, not just what we see of like doing the company, things like that, but he answers people's letters.
He does.
He sends them tapes.
Yeah.
Did you ever get one of those tape letters from Derek?
No, I never have.
I got one of those where he plays guitar and talks to you.
No,
Yeah.
I'm you lucky
I want to
stiff.
tell you about it.
No, but also just the whole act of listening to things people give him that are really, like, obviously, this is not a record made by somebody that's gonna come up with some great financial deal for me. He just might like something just because it's totally off the wall.
Yeah. So you got those 2 records, and you had some correspondence. You got some more records.
Oh yeah, then I started kind of collecting them and stuff.
When did you I had I followed a similar kind of path myself. I was going to school in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and they used to carry records they got from Mary Lou Webb. And so I'd look at them, and I saw that Topography Along was there and bought it, and went home and put it on, and I thought, what cut did I listen to? Titan Moon's the long cut? What's the third cut called on the other side? Anyway,
I don't remember the
I
rest
listened
of
to
the
that,
individual
and there's
songs.
this one part where Evan Parker's playing this long tone, and then Derek played these little harmonics, and they kind of fed back in a weird kind of way, and that made me go out and buy a guitar when I heard that. Just those notes on that. That's because I didn't play guitar until I heard that, Eugene, and it made me go buy a guitar.
Have you heard the story about that session that I don't remember it exactly, but I think Derek got there on time, but the other 2 guys got there an hour late because they were running around looking for reeds or something. Or who knows, maybe Han Bennick was smoking grass or something, but then Derek apparently got up, put his coat on, and left for an hour, made them wait for an hour, and then he came back and then they played. That's just a story.
Even then.
Well, the really neat thing is just how much he likes to play and improvise, not from the point of view of coming up with some kind of marketable goods from it, or just usually when I'm in London now, he says, just bring your banjo over so we can play. And he likes to play for about 25 minutes, and then he says, okay, that's just really fun. I really like that.
I found a taste for that 25-minute thing myself. When people come visit here, it's about how long I like to play.
That's really fun. So then he was telling me about Alex Ward.
Yeah, that's
young saxophone guy.
Clarinet guy.
Yeah, clarinet and saxophone. He's been playing with me in the Hellington Country Band, and he's got this project he does with another guy called 13 Ghosts, which I would recommend there.
They made a CD with Derek. I've got that.
Yeah. And Derek was complaining to me about the recording process with these guys because he says they come over to make a tape, and he figures after they've gotten about 20 minutes on tape, they do that a few times, they should have enough for a CD. But he said these guys kept coming over, making DAT tapes, and then calling him up and going, well, we've been listening to the DAT tapes, and there's a few bits we like, and we want to get together and kind of redo them and perfect them. And he finally lost his patience for this. He said, you can come over and play if you want, but no more tapes.
Did you think there was a point where where you noticed how Derek was more technical than you thought? Because you can tell he knows what he's doing, and he's playing these funny intervals and the stop notes and the harmonics on Incas too. But later, when 1974, 1975, when Lot 74 came out and the Cramp solo record, it became more of a virtuoso kind of thing. Did you think?
Well, I don't know. The first thing that impressed me was that he wasn't playing anything really fast and wasn't playing really high up the neck going, It So I like that. I like the fact that he was very subtle and would play slow and was trying to make you think about what he was playing. Definitely the record you talk about, the Cramps record, sounds very kind of virtuosity.
He plays fast.
Oh yeah, but
On that.
they all kind of sound like that to me. You know, he's got the thing that, like we were talking about, J.J. Cale and Willie Nelson. Like Willie Nelson, when you hear him play a solo, he'll play something, just the way he plays one note. It isn't about virtuosity, but because he's a really fine guitarist, just the way he plays one note sometimes is really, really telling. And
Yeah.
Derek is just the same way.
I mean, there's so many guitar players you can recognize with one note. I mean,
Right.
I'm sure you have one note you can play. It's a Eugene note. I love that. More than one note, I'm afraid.
There was a funny story he told me about playing duets with, well, I won't tell you the name of the guitarist.
Come on,
because it would
come on.
Probably embarrassing.
Come on.
Well, it was Hans Reichel when he was really young. Derek was doing a little tour with him, and he said he got really sick of, he liked Hans, but every time he stopped, Hans would stop. He was like constantly watching his fingers and watching where he would stop. And so they got to a thing where they were doing a radio broadcast. And Derek said he thought to himself, hey, this is great. I'm finally in a situation, because they put up isolation barriers for these guys. I'm finally in a situation where Hans isn't going to be able to watch my fingers, so he's not going to be able to know when I'm stopping, because he had gotten so sick of this. And I know what he's talking about, not in terms of Hans, necessarily, but people that do that. If you stop playing, they stop. I always find that sometimes annoying, because it's like then if it's a duo, then the music kind of drops, so you have to get something else going. So anyway, they start playing, and the same thing's going on. Whenever he stops, that guy would stop. And he looked up, and Hans was playing standing on his chair, looking over the barrier so he could see him. Have you ever heard Derek play at one of these jazz festivals where the audience gets really upset?
No.
And what he does usually is he just lets the guitar feedback until it's like louder than all the kind of rumble from the audience.
I once saw him at a festival where he played duo with Paul Motion. And there was actually one really cool thing I noticed about Paul Motion, which is Paul Motion evidently actually listening while he was playing.
He always did. He
Yeah,
plays
I know,
really
I know,
quietly.
I know.
He couldn't
But
help it.
most people don't. So Derek's playing, and you can see Paul Motion reaching out to hit a certain cymbal, and his hand moving pretty fast. And like Derek would play some other note while the hand was on the way to the cymbal, and then Paul
He would
Motion would
change his
change direction and play some other drum to match what had happened while his hand was moving. And I saw that happen a bunch of times. I was impressed. What's your favorite stuff at Derek's? I like the talking pieces a lot.
I can tell. I like the solo guitar, of course, because then you hear it in its purest essence. But I really like it when he puts together or gets involved in just some really off-the-wall group. Because, players, what usually seems to happen is players come along that are really weird, and whereas other people are like resisting them. He always throws his lot in with them. For instance, I like that Tony Oxley quartet on Incas,
Oh, the one
with
with
Matt
the
Wan
two
and Pat
electronics?
Thomas.
Yeah,
That's just incredible. I mean,
Where the sum of the people makes it a totally different kind of music than it's ever been before.
now then again, Braxton Bailey, I really, really like.
There's a bunch of those
I
now.
think those are great. But for instance, Bailey Lacey on Incas, I don't like that. But then, Steve Lacey doesn't like to free improvise, so he calls it a fishing expedition. And that was a record where they didn't catch anything.
Yeah. some questions. My turn.
How do you keep that good tan going all your time?
It said
So,
on this topic.
when you recorded the duet,
Oh, that's a
With
funny
Derek
story.
Bailey.
That's a funny story. Because, so, Derek Bailey's just like you. He's a big hero, right? And Derek Bailey hates to play with guitar players, right?
Yeah.
But at least you can play the banjo. But
that's what I have going for me now.
Yeah,
He always tells me to bring the banjo over.
But I'm stuck with the guitar.
Yeah.
And so we had this gig, and we agreed to do it. I think that was before he made all these records he made with the other guitar players that he's made lately. With Pat Metheny and KG Hino and
Yeah.
you.
Coming out with me, right?
Well, anyway, so we were going to do this fancy audio file recording by this guy, Kavi Alexander, who runs this label called Water Lily in Santa Barbara. And he records in a chapel and records with a special custom-made $25,000 microphone. So we got there, we're in the chapel, and the microphone's about as big as a refrigerator. And he moves it so it's right in front of us, about 8 inches in front of us. And we, sit our chairs down, like two guys who are going to play on stage, Base of the chairs about 3 or 4 feet apart, right? And so Kavi keeps coming out and says, no, you have to move closer. So we move a little closer. Kavi says, no, closer. So we have to move inside that level of English personal distance that English folks have. So we're kind of sitting there with our knees touching. And then Kavi says, no, it's got to be closer. He kind of pushes it together so our legs are all touching on one side. And we're just right on top of each other. And you can tell, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, God, this is going to make Derek uncomfortable. And, oh, it's going to be really bad. He doesn't like to play with the guitar players anyway. And here he is doing this. He didn't know we'd have to sit this close. He's not going to make it too hard. And that's what Kavi says, roll the tape. And we start playing.
Yes, so you roll the tape. Then what happened?
So we start playing, and it feels really good to play despite the circumstances. It kind of stops, and we kind of realized it kind of felt like it was one big guitar. Maybe because when you sit that extra close to somebody, the sound moves faster between, and you can react even faster. Have you ever done that playing really close, like closer than we're playing now?
Not really.
We're what? We're 5 feet apart, but 4 or 5 feet apart. But when you're right,
except sometimes a stage is really small, and you end up practically sitting in someone's lap.
When you're right in somebody's lap, I think maybe the communication is faster. So we played all this stuff that sounded, like hocketed lines that made, two guitar things sound like one big guitar. And it just felt really good, and it was real different and novel, and we both enjoyed it and survived it. And then I listened to it, and it sounded fine. But it was
Is it all from that session?
it's all that session, yeah. But it's a weird experience. I mean, you've had the experience of playing with your heroes before, right? So which are the scariest heroes to play with for you? I mean, we get used to this after all these years. People come up to me all the time and say, man, how could you play with Derek Bailey or Richard Thompson or Jerry Garcia or, And it doesn't seem like a big deal now.
It's usually a bigger deal thinking about it than actually doing it. That's what I've found.
Because
My favorite thing is when you're doing a version of a song with the person that recorded it in the first place. I really like that.
So that's the Jimmy Carl Black effect?
Yeah, or Miss Ann with Ann Bennick, or I did a gig with Ed Cassidy of Spirit. We did Fresh Garbage.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
That's just the two of you?
Yeah.
That's great.
Great jazz drummer.
But it is kind of a surprising thing is you can just go ask these people and approach them, and you can do something cool together with them, people that you used to listen to when you were a kid, right?
That's the same way people feel about us.